Hello everyone. Welcome back to our channel. In today's video, we're going to understand one of the most basic and most important concepts in electronics. What exactly is electricity? We use electricity every single day, but very few people know what it truly is. So let's break it down in the simplest way possible. Electricity is actually very simple to understand. Inside every wire around us, there are tiny particles called electrons. These electrons are always present inside metals. Now, when these electrons start moving from one place to another, that movement is what we call electricity. So remember this in one line. Electricity equals flow of electrons. Now that we know electricity is just the flow of electrons, let's make this even easier to understand with a simple example. Let's move to the next part, the water analogy. Imagine you have a long pipe filled with water. If you push water from one side, the water starts flowing through the pipe and comes out the other side. This flow of water represents the flow of electrons in a wire. Just like water is stored inside a pipe, electrons are stored inside a metal wire. They are already present there. We don't need to add them. Now, when water flows inside the pipe, we say there is water flow. Similarly, when electrons flow inside the wire, we say there is electric current. So in this analogy, a water represents electrons. A pipe represents the wire. A water flow represents electric current. Once you understand this idea, electricity becomes very simple because it behaves almost exactly like water in a pipe. When something pushes the water, the flow increases. When nothing pushes the water, the flow stops. The same thing happens with electrons in a wire. This water analogy is the best way to visualize how electricity works. Now that we understand that electricity flows like water in a pipe, the next question is, what makes electrons start moving? What gives them the push to flow? To understand that, we need to learn about voltage. So let's move on to the next part. Now let's understand what is voltage. To understand this, let's go back to our water pipe example. Water flows only when there is some pressure pushing it. If there is no pressure, water will just sit inside the pipe without moving. In the same way, electrons will not move by themselves. They need a push. And this push is called voltage. Voltage is simply the force or pressure that pushes electrons through a wire. A battery or power supply creates this pressure difference. One side of the battery pulls electrons, and the other side pushes electrons, causing them to move. So in simple words, voltage equals the pressure that makes electrons flow. Higher voltage means stronger push. Lower voltage means weaker push. Without voltage, electrons won't move, and without movement, there is no electricity. Up to this point, we've learned that voltage is the push that makes electrons flow. Next, let's see what happens when this flowing energy enters a bulb. Let's continue. Now, let's understand what happens when moving electrons reach a device, like a light bulb. Inside a bulb, there is a thin wire called a filament. When electrons flow through this filament, they collide with the atoms inside it. Due to these collisions, the filament heats up and starts glowing. The glowing filament produces light. This is why a bulb lights up. So the bulb is not glowing because of magic. It glows simply because moving electrons are giving their energy to the filament. This is how electrical energy is converted into light energy. Till here, we understood how a bulb glows when electrons transfer their energy. Now let's look at some real-life examples where the movement of electrons is happening all the time. When you plug your mobile phone into the charger, electrons flow into the battery and store energy inside it. When you switch on a fan, electrons move through the motor and make the blades rotate. When you turn on a light, electrons move through the bulb and make it glow, just like we saw earlier. So every device we use works only because electrons are moving and transferring their energy. These everyday devices work only because electrons are constantly moving. So the entire concept of electricity can be understood with just 3 points. Electrons, the wire they travel through, and the energy they carry. And that brings us to the end of today's video. I hope this simple explanation helped you understand what electricity really is. If you learned something new, Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more easy electronics lessons. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.